The movie opens on the 17th of June, 1995, showing a man named Danny Lugo working out outside a gym. When he notices a swarm of police officers approaching, he panics and bolts, trying to make a run for it. He does everything he can to evade them, but unfortunately, he's struck by a police car, and the scene quickly flashes back to 6 months earlier. Danny is a clever man who has just been released from prison after serving time for Medicare fraud. Despite his record, he tries to start fresh by landing a job at a gym called Sun Gym, where he promises the owner, John Mees, that he'll triple their membership within 3 months. Although it seems impossible, John gives him a chance, and Danny proves himself by reviving the gym and drawing in a large crowd of new members. While working as a personal trainer, Danny befriends a man named Adrian. Adrian is a bodybuilder and a skilled athlete, but he relies on steroids to speed up his progress. The gym's comeback brings good profits to both John and Danny, but even as Danny climbs higher in position, he still feels it isn't enough and wants to make more money. One day, he sees a man named Johnny Woo on television, proudly flaunting his wealthy lifestyle. Johnny tells the viewers that if they want to be like him, they should attend his seminar. Danny takes on a new client named Victor Kershaw, a man who also never stops showing off his wealth. Victor is truly wealthy, a self-made immigrant from Colombia who builds multiple businesses in the US, earning him a huge fortune. Hearing Victor's stories makes Danny feel envious, and he starts to realize that he needs to find another way to succeed in life. He shares his thoughts with Adrian, who's in a similar situation, and admits that he's grown tired of being just another obedient employee. Danny attends Johnny Woo's seminar, where Johnny encourages his audience to be doers and shares the 3 steps to success: set a goal, make a plan, and stick to that plan. Inspired by Johnny Woo's words, Danny makes a bold and dangerous decision. He comes up with a plan to kidnap Victor and take all of his wealth by force. He shares his idea with Adrian, trying to convince him that this is their chance to change their lives and finally reach their goals. Adrian agrees to the plan, but they still need another partner, so Danny turns to Paul Doyle, a former drug addict who has just been released from prison. Despite his troubled past and mistakes, Paul has changed and finds a new path as a devoted Christian. After getting out of prison with nowhere else to go, Pastor Randy takes him in and lets him stay at the church. Because of his bad reputation, Paul struggles to find a decent job and eventually considers joining Danny's risky plan. As time passes, Danny and Paul grow closer and eventually become good friends. Even though Paul insists he no longer drinks, he still joins Danny and Adrian for a night out at a local bar. While hanging out there, the 3 meet a dancer named Christina, an immigrant with big dreams and a strong ambition to make something of herself. Seeing an opportunity, Danny decides to include Christina in his plan, but instead of telling her the truth, they lie and say she's going to be a model for a music video they're supposedly working on. After leaving the bar, Danny continues to lay out the details of his plan to kidnap Victor, but Paul immediately refuses, knowing it's against the law and reminding himself that he's trying to change his life for the better. The next day, Adrian begins to suffer from the side effects of his heavy steroid use, which causes problems with his manhood. He decides to see a doctor for a checkup, but ends up flirting first with a nurse named Rubina. Feeling frustrated about what the steroids have done to him, Adrian is told by the doctor that his condition can still be treated, but the treatment won't come cheap. Meanwhile, Paul continues his journey of change with Pastor Randy at the church, but it turns out the pastor secretly has inappropriate desires for him and makes unwanted advances. This enrages Paul, and he loses control, beating the pastor so badly that he nearly kills him in anger. After the incident, Paul meets with Danny and tells him he's finally on board with the plan and ready to join their team, but he makes it clear that he doesn't want anyone to get hurt. They then visit a weapon shop to buy the gear they need, and Paul manages to pull it off by lying that he used to be in the military. The shop owner easily believes him because of his big muscular build and hands over all the weapons the group needs. When they return home, Danny lays out a detailed plan for how they'll break into Victor's house and capture him, leaving the other 2 amazed by how well he's thought everything through. However, their first attempt fails when they discover there's a party going on at Victor's place, forcing them to run off before they get caught. Their second attempt also doesn't go as planned.
Prepare to neutralize the target.
Go, 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 go! Get him, get him!
What the
Swipe! You get him? What the f? He was right here! Where'd he go? You see him?
Where the hell is he?
There he is!
Fuck! You got the wrong BMW! Told you to check the license plate!
We thought it was the same car. It looked exactly the same.
I told you, M98305!
So they decide to ambush Victor outside his private airport, where they finally manage to take him down with a taser. They quickly throw him into their van and bring him to a warehouse filled with sex toys. To make sure Victor can't identify anyone, they blindfold him, and Danny even changes his voice to disguise himself. But despite all his efforts to hide his identity, Victor still recognizes him, all because of his familiar cologne. Angry and frustrated, Danny tells Victor that he's going to take everything he owns, but Victor refuses to give in easily, knowing how hard he worked for his fortune. They then force him to call his family and convince them to leave the country, giving a fake story about why he suddenly disappeared so they wouldn't suspect anything or report it to the police. Danny begins setting up his alibi by consistently showing up for work at the gym, while Paul stays behind to watch over Victor by himself. As they talk, Paul discovers that Victor has also stopped drinking and is now living a sober life, just like him. Paul offers him some food and water, which makes Victor realize that Paul is far more compassionate than the other two. Paul starts talking about his faith, making Victor believe that maybe he was sent by God to guide his kidnappers toward the right path. Eventually, Paul learns that Victor is Jewish, and he continues by placing his hand on Victor's head and asking if he accepts Jesus Christ as his Lord and Savior.
I do. That felt great. Oh, how did you do that?
I have a gift. Good.
13 days have passed since they abducted Victor, and they keep trying to make him sign documents transferring his properties, but he refuses every time, so they continue to torture him. Still, because of Paul's kindness, he and Victor begin to form an unexpected bond. Meanwhile, Christina discovers that Danny's story about the music video was a lie, so he quickly makes up another one, claiming he's actually working on a secret mission for the CIA.
The CIA? Police CIA?
Those goggles?
One time in Hong Kong, I had to live for a week in a tree. No food, no bathroom, no nothing.
He then tells her that if she wants to help with his mission, she needs to get close to Paul, and Christina agrees to play along. One day, while Paul is guarding Victor, the latter tries to escape, forcing Paul to knock him unconscious.
Damn it! Why'd you make me do that to you, Victor? I have responsibilities. Jesus Christ himself has blessed me with many gifts. One of them is knocking someone the f out.
Later, Paul heads to a bar where Christina approaches him, still convinced that she's part of Danny's supposed CIA mission. Suddenly, a rich man named Frank Griga appears and pulls Christina away from Paul, sparking a brief argument between them. 3 weeks go by, and they still haven't gotten Victor to sign the documents. But then they find out he owns a racing dog, so Adrian steals it and gifts it to his girlfriend, Nurse Rubina. As the torture becomes unbearable, Victor is finally forced to sign the transfer documents for his properties. However, Danny is frustrated to learn that a notary public must witness Victor's signature. He remembers that his boss, John, is a notary, but John refuses to notarize the documents because Victor isn't present. By chance, John needs a sponsor for an upcoming contest, so Danny bribes him and successfully gets the documents notarized legally. This means Victor's properties are officially transferred to Danny, marking the success of his plan. Their final crucial step is to get rid of Victor, so Danny tells Paul to get him extremely drunk. Victor cries and pleads with Paul to save him, offering all his wealth in exchange for his life. Paul tells him he must get drunk and forget Danny's face before they take him to the airport to release him. Victor doesn't believe him and warns that he'll report Paul to Jesus when he reaches heaven, which infuriates Paul.
You're not gonna tell Jesus anything.
Paul forces Victor to drink excessively, and that night, they take him to a remote area. There, they try to kill him by putting him in a car and forcing him to drive until he crashes. Despite the severe impact, Victor survives thanks to his airbags and seatbelt. They continue their attempt by pouring gasoline over the car to set it on fire. Confident from the explosion, the three assume Victor is dead, but are shocked when he emerges from the car, seemingly unharmed. Danny orders Paul to run him over, and though hesitant, Paul does it. Victor still survives, so Danny orders Paul to back up the car and finish him off, and although Paul hesitates again, he ends up doing it anyway. The three then leave in their van, but miraculously, Victor survives once more, sustaining only a few broken bones. The police arrive and take Victor to the hospital, where investigators question him about his kidnapping story. However, they don't believe him and assume he's making it all up. Their interest fades even more after a background check reveals that Victor had a previous case for selling illegal substances in his home country, and they wonder why no one reported him missing. Meanwhile, Danny's group discovers that Victor survived and quickly heads to the hospital to take care of unfinished business. After the police leave, Victor finds a book about a famous detective and tries to call for help. It turns out he reaches the detective's son, Ed, because the book Victor saw is old and the detective had already passed away. Ed is also a skilled detective, though now retired. Victor pleads for his assistance, but Ed senses he might be lying and simply advises him to leave the public hospital, as it would be easy for anyone trying to kill him to get inside. Soon after, the three manage to sneak into the hospital disguised as staff, only to find out that Victor has already escaped. Back home, they split the money they took, knowing the police won't believe Victor due to his criminal record. Later in June 1995, the three start living it up, spending all of Victor's money and enjoying his assets. Danny focuses on taking over Victor's mansions, while Paul spends time with his now girlfriend Christina, though it becomes clear he has strayed again and fallen back into his drug addiction. Adrian manages to get some treatment for his dying little buddy, and later, he pops the question to Rubina. Meanwhile, Victor is hiding in a hotel, where Ed visits him and promises to help track down the people who tortured him. A few days go by, and the three continue settling into their new life, mingling with neighbors and using false identities. Unbeknownst to them, while they're living it up, Ed starts keeping a close eye on their every move. Paul becomes even more reckless, diving deeper into substances, and on top of that, his extravagant girlfriend causes him to drain his share of the money. Ed continues passing on all the information he gathers about the three to Victor, and after some time, he comes up with a plan to pose as a client for Danny. He does this to get closer to Danny, explaining that his friend Victor had recommended both the gym and Danny's services. Danny is taken aback by this revelation, and it quickly becomes clear to him that the police are now keeping a close eye on their activities. A few weeks later, Adrian finally marries Rubina, while Paul, still desperate for money, decides to attempt a robbery of an armored truck on his own. The police quickly give chase and open fire, and although Paul manages to escape by jumping into the water, he is shot and loses his big toe in the process. He rushes straight to the wedding, where he confesses to Danny about his carelessness and the mistakes he's made. Paul then suggests they pull off another job, with Frank Griga as their next target, and Adrian immediately likes the idea.
He blew his whole cut, now he wants to do another job.
Is that right?
Why did you say it like that? Because I put all my money in the house. Now I need a...
Procedure.
A procedure? You know what? Why don't you glue his toe onto your balls? Everyone wins.
Meanwhile, thanks to the information from Ed, Victor discovers that John is the one who notarized the documents for Danny, and he threatens John to get them back. After the call, an angry John informs Danny of the news and even tries to confront him. The two confront Victor, and by force, manage to find out his location. However, when they arrive at the hotel, Victor is already gone, and Danny instead confirms that his client, Ed, is indeed a detective. Ed talks to the police chief to tell him that Victor's story is true, but the chief still refuses to take the case, claiming it's too minor. Still, Ed warns that he suspects the three are planning another crime, so they need to be closely monitored. Later, Danny and Adrian head to Ed's house to gather information and try to track down Victor, but they're caught off guard by the sudden arrival of the police. The two quickly flee and jump into the water, only to realize that the police are just escorting their former colleague, Ed, home. To keep Victor safe from anyone chasing him, Ed decides to take him to his own house. Despite all the chaos, Danny refuses to back down, and ultimately, he goes along with Paul's plan to target Frank Griga. Frank's fortune comes from his phone sex business, and Danny pretends they are a legitimate company seeking investors to help grow their business. Frank recognizes Paul as the man he had an argument with at the bar, and eventually he agrees to invest. Before proceeding, he introduces his wife, Sabrina, to the three and proudly shows off her new breast implants. They continue their negotiations at Adrian's house, though his wife Rubina is absent, working overtime at the hospital. While the others are making noise and enjoying themselves, Frank and Danny have a serious discussion about the business, with Frank saying he isn't fully convinced since they're still amateurs compared to him. Hearing this, Danny flies into a rage at being called an amateur, unable to accept it because he knows how hard he has worked for everything he has. In the end, Danny accidentally kills Frank when a heavy piece of metal falls on his head. Sabrina arrives, shocked at the scene, and immediately aims a gun at Danny, but he manages to dodge, and the others restrain her. They tranquilize Sabrina to calm her down, and Danny explains to the group how the accident occurred. While obtaining the safe codes from Sabrina, they don't notice that the dog they have stolen from Victor has escaped. The two leave Adrian at home to clean up, while they go to Frank's mansion to steal the contents of his safe. However, the code Sabrina gives them turns out to be wrong, and unfortunately, Adrian accidentally kills her after giving her far too many tranquilizers meant for horses. Danny is extremely upset and furious upon hearing the news, but they have no choice but to keep going. They decide to just steal Frank's sports cars instead, and before leaving, Paul gives Frank's dog his severed toe. When they get back, they load the bodies into their van and transport them to their warehouse. Danny tells Paul to stay behind and keep watch over the bodies, and when Paul says he wants to quit, Danny reminds him that it was his idea to begin with and that he needs to see it through. Meanwhile, a man spots Victor's dog and calls the police, suspecting it has been stolen, while one of Frank's assistants notices Paul's severed finger next to the dog and also alerts the authorities. After returning from shopping for cleaning supplies and other materials for the bodies, Danny and Adrian begin removing their fingerprints.
What are we gonna do with their fingerprints on their fingers?
They even use an axe to erase the fingerprints from the bodies themselves, and then instruct Paul to grill them up. Paul follows through at first, but eventually gives up and leaves the others. Despite this, Danny and Adrian continue the work, placing the dismembered bodies into containers and dumping them into the sea. Meanwhile, the police chief starts moving against the three criminals, briefing his team on their mission to capture them all at once, but individually. Soon after, they put their plan into action, beginning with John, who is caught during his gym contest. Afterward, they move on to Paul, arresting him at the church, while Adrian is tracked down and apprehended at his own home. The scene returns to the beginning of the movie, where Danny is struck by a police car, yet he still manages to flee and escape on a boat. With Victor's help, they discover that Danny is heading to the Bahamas to withdraw the rest of Victor's money from the bank. They rush there, and their suspicion is confirmed when they catch Danny at the bank, sparking another chase. Ed shoots Danny in the leg, and as he tries to run again, he is run over by the car Victor is driving, finally stopping him and ensuring he is captured. After Danny is returned, the three face trial in court, with Christina and Rubina testifying against them. At first, Danny feels confident that there is no evidence linking them to the murders, but the bodies are recovered from the sea, along with Sabrina's breast implants, which are used to confirm their identities. On top of that, Paul admits to his crimes and points to the two friends as the masterminds behind everything. Thanks to his cooperation, Paul is given a comparatively light sentence of 15 years, which he spends devotedly serving in the church. Meanwhile, Danny and Adrian face a series of serious charges, and it takes the judge merely 14 minutes to hand down the death sentence for both of them.
In fact, the only thing they weren't found guilty of was the one thing they were most guilty of: being dumb, stupid.
The movie wraps up by showing the real-life images of the characters, revealing that John had passed away while serving time in prison.
Thank you so much for staying till the end. If you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell for future uploads.